So let's have a look at what happened with Simeon Brown today. We know the story so far. We know the story about what's happened so far. Basically, there was this idea from Waka Kotahi now this is a really important point. When a road sign needed to be replaced, right? When a roadside sign and some location signs needed to be replaced. So not like look at this government wasting all this money going out and just taking down perfectly good road signs. That's not the case. When a road sign needed to be replaced, and remember we've just had cyclones go through the top half of the North Island, and there's probably quite a few of them though. When that time happens, replacing them with road signs that very clearly, and we'll even bring up an image, shall we? So everyone can see how clearly, where is it? Very clearly, and there it is, there's one, in English and Māori, say what the new road sign would look like. Okay, so that's the first thing. It's when they needed to be replaced. Now, Simeon Brown came out, and I'm paraphrasing right now, but he said, we all speak English, they should be in English. And I don't care what people say about is it or isn't it. It's a complete dog whistle. Now, Simon Wilson's article actually goes on a little bit about this, and I think he's got some very interesting points. But if you've been with us, I feel like I don't need to have the screen on here. I should be there. Hi. If you've been with us for a long time, you'll know and you'll have heard me say before such and such's dilemma, Luxon's dilemma, Plunkett's dilemma, that they're trying to attain this audience, which is a new audience. It's further to the right, and it seems to be emboldened by perhaps the far right world, would be it MAGA or somewhere else, to be more vocal in their opposition of the norms. Now, in general, I guess we should say we don't have a problem with people being opposition of the norms, but it's the conspiracy theorist world, it's the QAnon world, it's the anti-vaxxers, anti-mandates, anti-masker world, right? And we've been saying for quite a long time, and Plunkett's a good example of this, is that he's going to get to a point where he has a dilemma, and his dilemma is going to be, does he keep spouting off the bullshit that he actually doesn't believe, which actually he's pulled back on, they've written about them, and lose this new audience he's building, or does he stick with it and basically grift? Now, Luxon's got the same dilemma, and we've talked about this before. We've talked about... do you remember he said something to a fallen Māori leader in Māori on, well, he wouldn't have said it, someone wrote it for him on his Facebook page, and the racist just came out in force about him putting Māori language on his own Christopher Luxon page. And so the dilemma is, how do you placate that racist element, that misogynistic element, that QAnon element, because you want their vote, without turning off the quote-unquote normies who have been with you for the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years voting for National. So when the dog whistle term has been coming out for Simeon Brown, it is 100% what it is, because what National's actively trying to do is attract those people who think those bloody uppity Maori are getting just too much at the moment. They're trying to attract them to vote for them whilst not turning off the centrist. Simon Wilson talks about this, but I guess I wanted to earmark to you, if you've been with us for a while, you know we've been talking about this for quite a long time. And this, to come back to the Simeon Brown situation, is absolutely a dog whistle to those people. So I'm going to play some video very shortly, and I want to show you what a political figure will do when they get their talking points for the day. So what's happened is they've gone into the PR spin alley, spin room in National, and they've gone, how can we walk this back so we don't lose face, but we don't have to say, no, we were wrong? How do we walk back Simeon's comments about they should only be in English because we all speak English, paraphrased, so it doesn't look like we've dog whistled, so it doesn't look like we were wrong, but it also to placate that centrist voter who might actually hear what he said and go, oh, I'm a bit uncomfortable with that. How do you do that? So we'll look at that through and through the night as well. What is wrong with this? Brown challenged over bilingual road signs. We'll get to the video shortly, but there's an important part for this, and I want to say it again. This is from the One News, I believe, article. Yep. Waka Kotahi, the transport agency, last week launched a consultation on bilingual road signs. It proposes using bilingual signs, again, really important, when the old ones are being replaced. Waka Kotahi has also said it's done considerable research around safety. Got all that? Considerable research around safety means, this is the thing where they make a balls up, any political party, but in this case it's national. When they make a balls up, they look for a way to kind of find that they can actually, when you have an argument with your girlfriend or boyfriend and the argument's about something, and then they find another reason to validate what they've said, even though it's got nothing to do with the argument. You know what I mean? They find another thing to kind of twist and throw in there. It's sort of like that. Simeon Brown said something and they're trying to find other ways to tie it in to it being a valid comment. And one of the things that's come up today is talking about, what if people can't read the signs? What if they're looking to get somewhere urgently and they can't read them? What if it's a safety issue? It's another idea that came up after the original comments to tie back in to what's going on. So this is Simeon Brown today in Parliament. And this is a tweet that I put out today, but I put the tweet out because I wanted to show you what some of the talking points were. And you can listen to them in this conversation. It's a 3-minute clip. I'll play it all for you. So my tweet says this. Here's the narrative that National has settled on. So this is the Spin Alley has come up with a way to get around what he said to try and say, no, this is what I meant. That National has settled on in an attempt to back away from their weekend of dog whistling, right? Today, through the day in the news media, you should have been looking out for these things from national MPs or leaders. Critical safety signs, right? That's some words that have come up with in Spin Alley that they've been talking about today. Travelling at speed, it's another one. Even the Prime Minister said it. In other words, trying to offload some of the fault of this comment to the Prime Minister and say, well, we're only saying what he's saying, which isn't true, but it's what they said. And the other one, of course, fixing roads, fixing potholes. That's what came out of Spin Alley today. Those were the points that needed to be hit to have people not look at Simeon Brown as, making racially charged comments, not look at Simeon Brown as someone who is, pitching towards the alt-right or the QAnon audience or the far-right audience, the racist, misogynist audience. Now, that's actually a rewriting of history because that's not what they said. But what they do the day after, and again, any political party will do this, is they try and flip it to try and go, oh, no, you news media, you public, you got it wrong. Sorry, that's not what I said. I mean, my words might have sounded like that, but what I meant was this. Right, you got that? So Simeon Brown's bailed up in one of the corridors of power today, and he has asked, first of all, to identify what's wrong with the sign. Now, we never see the sign. This is the raw footage, maybe on the news that showed what sign they were looking at. But it's obviously going to be something like that Havelock North sign. It's going to be a sign like that. So have that in your head, even if that's not the right sign. And he gets challenged and asked what's confusing about the song. Because remember yesterday, they were talking about it's going to be confusing to people. I think that's what Christopher Luxon said.
What is wrong with this sign?
Well, what we've said is in the National Party that we don't have an issue with bilingual signage when it comes to place names. But when it comes to critical safety signs, even the Prime Minister said that this morning, that it's really important people understand that quickly and easily, particularly when they're travelling at speed.
Oh,
you have an issue though.
You said we speak English, they should all be in English.
Well, I think what I was saying.
That's English on there is.
So in other words, the reporter has just repeated back to him his exact words that had nothing to do with the spin today, but now he has to reiterate the spin and explain that, no, what you heard was wrong. This is what I meant.
What I was saying there is it's really important that people can quickly understand those signages are travelling at speed, particularly on motorways or expressways.
Travelling at speed.
And the vast majority of New Zealanders speak English. And it's really important that those signs are quickly understandable. So that was the point I was making. Do you get confused?
So this is one of the most stupid points, that people travelling at speed need to understand them. Now, okay, if we take that as gospel, we have a huge number of tourists that come to New Zealand, right? And those tourists, many of them won't speak English. So what's Simeon Brown's solution for that? Yeah? And the other thing to remember is this is not about critical signage. This is about place names. This is about, 200 metres turn off to Havelock North. To be able to need to react to those because there's speed involved, it's just not plausible. But repetition, and like in the world of radio, you get trained into this. Repetition means importance, right? If you say it enough times, you can put it another way. If you throw enough shit, some will stick. Repetition means importance. And hopefully what a political party gets is the headline. And even if they have to say exactly the same thing 20 times, they want that message to cut through beyond what was actually meant when they said it in the time. Let's go back a little bit because he gets asked a really interesting question about why can't he understand it?
Quickly understandable. So that was the point I was making.
Do you get confused being the MP for Pakuranga?
I'm very proud to be the MP for Pakuranga. I'm very proud to sing our national anthem in Te Reo and in English. We have a proud heritage in New Zealand, but at the same time we need to make sure when it comes to critical safety signs on our roads, and the Prime Minister acknowledged it this morning, there's got to be a balanced approach as well.
Now, that's just a bold-faced lie because this does not affect critical safety signs on our roads, right? So that's just a straight-out lie. Stop signs aren't going to change. Critical safety signs aren't going to change.
So can you...
a conflicting message, so you probably didn't use the right choice of words, perhaps.
Well, the reality is most people understand English and speak English, and it's really important that those signs are understandable, particularly when you're travelling at speed, and critical safety signs. Even the Prime Minister acknowledged that this morning.
Prime Minister
so it's really
acknowledged
important you just get the balance right when it comes to these things.
That was beautiful. That was like a boom, 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 3 in a row. It's the second time he said it in a minute 15. Let's go back and hear it again.
Understandable, particularly when you're travelling at speed, and critical safety signs. Even the Prime Minister acknowledged that this morning.
Boom, boom, boom.
So it's really important you just get the balance right when it comes to these things.
Actually have a look at the sign though. So to you, is that not balanced? Do you not understand that?
So the point there is we need to make sure that people who come to New Zealand as well can understand what's being said on a sign, and it's critically important we get the balance right.
Critically important.
So does that not have the balance right?
And he was trying his best to say the Prime Minister says that as well, and he got cut off. Now, the point being, again, he's talking about when people come to New Zealand, they need to be able to read the signs. What if they don't speak English, Mr. Brown? Then what?
And actually, the most important thing here is that actually this whole conversation...
Can you just ask him the question, does that sign not have the balance right for you?
What we should be focused on is fixing our roads and fixing our potholes. This government's focused on changing signage.
That's actually not the question though.
Which is
Looking
what...
at the sign, Simeon, does that balance not right for you?
I can read it, absolutely can read it. But the point here is we need to get back to fixing our roads. This government wants to change signage rather than get on...
only get changed when they're getting replaced.
Well, there's a whole lot of officials at NZTA spending huge amounts of taxpayers' money focusing on changing signage rather than focusing on...
They need to be replaced.
Well, there's a huge amount of staff.
So this is the reporters now all saying what we said earlier, is it's only when they need to be replaced. So it's not like maybe they've redesigned them. And look, we saw that Havelock North. I'm going to show it to you again, that Havelock North sign. It's not really a lot of money on design because the font hasn't really changed. It's a pretty simple thing to do. Reporters are now saying, yeah, but this is when they need to be replaced. Yeah, Paul's made a perfectly good comment there. Squirmy, squirm, squirm. It's about right too.
Huge amount of staff at NZTA running a consultation process, going out there and talking with people, designing new signs. This is a waste of time and a waste of money when what they should be doing is focused on fixing potholes on our roads. That's the priority.
If you were Transport Minister, would you can this?
Well, this is not a priority for a national government. We want to get back. We want to get back to fixing our roads. That's the number one priority. And I think the people of the East Coast would rather their roads fixed rather than waiting for the government to come up with changing the signage. The most important thing is get the roads fixed. That's what a national government will be doing.
So would you remove the...
It's also really good to remember that National's going to get the roads fixed. This is something that's, I think, a really important point. I think what we need to be doing, and maybe I'll start doing it actively, is writing down all these things that they say. Simeon's just said, National's going to fix the roads. Cool. Okay, so if National gets in, we'll have no more potholes. It's really important that we remember these things, and then should the government change, we get to use what they've said to hold them to account.
The signs?
No, but what I'm saying is what we'll be focused on is fixing our roads. That is the number one priority facing our roads in our transport system. And NZTA, the New Zealand Transport Agency, should be focused on fixing our roads, fixing potholes, not just going out there and spending huge amounts of money on changing signage, which is not a priority.
So there you go. Just again for you, the buzzwords or the quotes for today: critical safety signs, travelling at speed, even the Prime Minister said, and fixing potholes or fixing roads, interchangeable. And that was the lesson from today. It was also important to know this is from the same One News story, what Christopher Hipkins and Christopher Luxon said. Prime Minister Chris Hipkins was also asked his thoughts on the bilingual signage debate this morning. It's not uncommon for signs around the world to be bilingual. The safety signs will all continue to be the same. Important. So stop signs and give way signs, for example, won't be affected. But in terms of using Māori place names and so on, I've got no issue on it. He said, when asked if he went too far when calling National's comments on the signs dog whistles, Hipkins said National leader Christopher Luxon introduced lots of te reo when head of Air New Zealand into the airline's branding and practices, so I'm not sure why he has an issue with this. For his part, Luxon this morning echoed Brown's words when asked about signs. We have to make sure the roads are safe, and this is an absolute distraction. It's important to know Waka Kotahi's done a bunch of safety unless he's saying it's a distraction from the real issues. I don't think he is. I think he's saying it's a distraction from the people driving, which it's not. I'm not opposed to te reo or bilingual signs per se, but it's just the wrong priority. What is wrong is what we are discussing today rather than fixing roads. So let's have a quick look, shall we? This morning on the AM show, the Prime Minister was speaking to Ryan Bridge, and this conversation came up about, what do you mean? And look, I'll put my 2 cents worth in first of all. What do you mean? Who are you talking to when you reference dog whistles? And I think I've already explained who I think it is. If it was in America, it would be the redneck MAGA QAnoners. Now, there's a variant or version of that in New Zealand. I don't think they're quite as easy to quantify because we don't have necessarily all those terms with it. But it is the conspiracy theorist. It is the alt-right. It is the anti-vaxxer, the anti-masker, the anti-mandate. It is the people who say they're pro-free choice and anti-government other than when they need the government to prop up their businesses. It's that group. It's the people who think that those uppity Maoris are getting too bloody much. He may be more diplomatic than that. I don't have to be. That's who he's talking to. But let's hear what he himself had to say when asked that question from Ryan Bridge.
Let's move on, talk about bilingual road signs. You have accused Chris Luxon of dog whistling, which is a hugely provocative and damaging thing for Chris Luxon to be wearing. Who was he dog whistling to, in your opinion?
Well, I think if you look at the comments that Simeon Brown was making, basically saying that because most people speak in English, street signs should only be in English, I think that is a dog whistle.
To who?
And I think that, they should be called out on that.
To who?
Many other countries.
I don't know if Ryan Bridge is being disingenuous. I feel like he is, because to me it seems, look, tell me in the chat if I'm wrong, to me it seems very obvious who he's pitching it to. He's pitching it to people who think that we shouldn't be speaking bloody Maori. That's who he's dog whistling to. That's what I think. If I'm off though, tell me in the chat, but that's who I think. So I don't know what this question, unless what Bridge is trying to do is just get it on record so it can be a headline in an article. That could be the other case.
You will know this, Ryan. You've travelled around the world. Many other countries have bilingual street signs. There's nothing to be afraid of in having bilingual street signs. And in fact, if you look at where they're first being rolled out in the cyclone-affected areas of Tairāwhiti, actually half the population there are Māori. So I don't really understand what the concern is. And now they've got their campaign manager, Chris Bishop, out there saying that actually this is okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what Simeon Brown's point is.
No, I totally agree with you. I get all that. But who was he dog whistling to get votes, as you put it, Chris Luxon? Are you saying that he is dog whistling to racists?
Yes. Although, look, okay, let me just pull back. I'm saying yes. I've used this example before. It's very important what metric we use to measure things, including people, including are you racist? And I've used this example before, and you'll have heard it, and I'm sorry if I bore you with the same example, of the elderly couple holding an American flag at an Antifa rally. And all the Antifa members going past them going, racist, you're racist, racists. And my response is always, I don't know whether the elderly couple are racist or not, because holding an American flag is not a good enough metric to make that determination. So whilst I said a little bit tongue-in-cheek, yes, he's pitching to the racists, I am going to take one step back from that and say he's dog whistling to people who are who incorrectly think that Māori, for example, have got it better than the rest of them. Now, they may be racist, but there might also be people who are ignorant as well. I mean, I think it's fair to say, without being too judgy, that a lot of elderly people who grew up in a different time don't really get it. Don't really get, what institutional racism is, or long-term poverty. that's aided by institutional racism. Like they don't get it. So someone who has that opinion may not necessarily be 100% racist. Like you're just a racist, but there's certainly racial issues and racial undertones. So you might think that I'm being a bit kind, not just being overtly saying that they're all racists, but it depends what the metric is. It's important for us to have the correct metric before we make that accusation. So is he dog whistling to racists? Well, he certainly is, but it's a little bit like not everyone who believes that may be a racist. It's a little bit like, the white supremacists will vote for parties on the right, but not everyone who votes for parties on the right is a white supremacist. You know what I'm saying? So yes, this is a dog whistle to racists, but perhaps not everyone who agrees with this bluntly is a racist. There may be a grey area in between of not understanding, of being ignorant, of in between, etc., etc., etc.
Well, the people who are objecting to having te reo Māori used in any context, I think need to think again. And I don't think...
Are they racist people in your opinion?
I don't think the national... Well, I think people can, form their own judgments on that. But I don't think that politicians and political leaders should seek to use the greater use of te reo Māori as a wedge to divide.
I actually, to be honest with you, I'm quite enjoying watching Christopher Hipkins just power on as well. I mean, it frustrates me that the politicians aren't able to do what we do and have a big long conversation with no interruptions. But the flip side to it is I also get frustrated when an interviewer has to jump in after every half sentence to make sure they get all their questions in. So it's a bit of a 50-50, but it's quite good seeing the Prime Minister finish his point without stopping after being interrupted a little bit.
Between people.
Okay.
Te reo Māori is one of the official languages of New Zealand. It's our Indigenous language. I don't think we've got anything to fear by having te reo Māori on street signs.
Yeah, and I agree with you, but I'm talking about the language that you have used. You have accused Chris Luxon of dog whistling.
Yes.
And Kiri Allen has gone further and says that he is dog whistling to get votes. So
yes,
are you saying that anybody who opposes the signs is inherently racist?
This is the thing with words, right? I know that the term racist is kind of slightly slid, meaning it's got a different, but basically a racist says, my race is superior to your race. Your race is inferior. So I'm not trying to defend these people, but I like to be accurate. There will be people who don't want to see, te reo on a road sign who don't think they're better than anybody else. You might be, I know if Chewy was here, he'd probably be yelling at me right now. But this is just me being really fair and honest, that there will be some people who think te reo on a road sign is not appropriate. They don't want to see it, but they're not necessarily to that level of being racist. They don't think my race is superior to yours. Now, I know that there are different connotations with that word today, and it might not be dictionary definition quite as much as it was. But, racially charged, racial for sure, 100%. Racist, well, it's hard to tell. You can't say that 40% of the population is racist because they don't want to see Māori on whatever the number is on a sign.
No, I'm not saying that at all, but
So
I'm
who's
saying
he dog
that there's
whistling
certainly
to?
a racist there is a racist underbelly in some of the public dialogue around this, and that does seem to be an audience the National Party are trying to appeal to.
Okay. He's, and this is Chris Bishop, has said actually their concerns are from elderly people who have poor eyesight, who are genuinely worried about not being able to read a road sign.
Okay, we just got to put this to bed as well. So elderly people, this is national rewriting the history, right? Elderly people worried about not being able to read the road signs. You ready for this again? What problem do we have here with not being able to read that? Anybody? Bueller? Anybody? So this is almost like this is a wasted question because, I mean, I know that Hipkins didn't have this, but look at the sign. Who can't read that? Even if you don't speak Māori.
They need to do it in a hurry. Do you think that's legitimate, or are they
No,
part of the
that's not
racist
legitimate.
undertones that you're discussing?
Well, I think if he had a look at the signs, he would see that the words in English are still very prominent. No one is going to have any difficulty reading. If English is their only language, no one is going to have any difficulty interpreting what a street sign says. The other thing is, this isn't on the critical safety signs. So in terms of give way, stop signs, those sorts of things, they will still be the same as they have always been. This is around place names, it's around direction to amenities, those sorts of things. It is not the safety signs. And so one can only interpret that they have some other concerns that they're not being upfront about.
Okay. Let's talk very quickly.
There you go. So that's the amount we're going to see there. So I think racial underbelly is great. I think that's fair. Look, I mean, I'm not trying to defend the indefensible, but I'll say it again. People who don't want to see Māori place names on a street sign may not. And I guess what I'm saying is be the dictionary definition of what it means to be racist. That's what I'm saying. But certainly racially charged, racial undertones, just repugnant, revolting, people who need to learn more about the history of the country. As I said last night, if you're a part of this country, I'm sorry, but the Māori story is a part of your story. You can't be a part of this country, even if you're. I always used to say I'm Irish, right? I'm so white, I'm nearly pale blue. I have no whakapapa to any Māori lineage whatsoever, but I fully accept, bring on board, embrace the Māori story as a part of my story because I'm a part of this country. That story is an integral part of this country. It's a part of my story. And we talked a bit about this last night about, these so-called marketing gurus like Christopher Luxon. It seems that this unique part of New Zealand, this part of New Zealand that actually stands us apart from the rest of the world, as we said last night, there's not much, if anything else. I don't know, some of you cheeky monkeys see things like kiwi birds and stuff, but, when it comes to the culture of a country, the way it looks and feels and the people, that's about the only thing that stands us apart from any other country in the world. And if the right would actually embrace that and accept that and come on the journey with us with that, it would be better for everybody. Because it's part of who we are. Even if you have no lineage, even if you can't whakapapa to any part of the Māori culture whatsoever, anything like that, then it's a part of your story if you're a part of this country, because it's an integral part of this country's story. Simple. I find that really a simple concept, and if we all got that, I think it would be better for everybody. Carl says, what is Māori for incompetence, Simeon? Yeah, fair enough. Jezza says, interesting that Luxon can use Latin, but not te reo per se. Look, I also apologise. I'm not going to get to all your texts because it's still going crazy in the background and I'm just not getting, my pen. David says, the elderly get it. They just don't want to admit it, especially to themselves. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Is it Puma? Puma 89 says, thinking about it as people as racist is a red herring. Racism is a system. The people who are being dog whistled to are those who feel the established system that centers them is under threat. So those that are in power feel like they're under threat. Those who have always had the privilege feel like they're under threat and they don't want to give up that power or privilege. That's what I read in that comment, Puma. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but thank you for your comment. And Rob saying, my partner is screaming that if you can't read that sign, then you should not be driving.